Welcome to chapter 9 of 1 Corinthians. This is the continuation of Paul's discussion about the problems and challenges they had. Remember, last chapter we talked a lot about the importance of Paul's trying to tell the people to have more harmony. Do not let your beliefs become a stumbling block for somebody else's beliefs. So we need to seek more harmony and work together with people. So this is kind of a continuation of that discussion basically here in chapter 9. So verse 1, am I not an apostle? Am I not free? Have I not seen Jesus Christ our Lord? Are not ye my work in the Lord? So in this part of the discussion, Paul has some of the people in Corinth, some of the saints. Remember, this 1 Corinthians is the second letter Paul wrote to them. He admonished them in the first letter. He says, you guys are doing things wrong. You need to change. They push back and says, well, who is this Paul? Does Paul really have authority? He's kind of a Gentile apostle. Maybe he's not as authoritative as the Jewish apostles. You know, they're trying to justify why they shouldn't listen to Paul. And so he's bringing that up right at this point going, am I not an apostle? I am equal with Peter and James and John and Thaddeus and all those guys. I'm an apostle just like they are. I just wasn't there with Christ. I came in later. Am I not free? He is a free person. He's not in a slavery situation. He can freely think and move and act. And he in quotes, have I not seen Jesus? You know, Jesus appeared to him and talked with him. He's seen Jesus. That makes him a special witness of Jesus. So he's establishing himself as, guys, I have the credibility that you should follow me, basically. Verse 2, if I be not an apostle unto others, yet doubtless I am to you. For the seal of mine apostleship are ye in the Lord. So what he's saying basically is, guys, I helped teach the gospel to you guys. I helped establish the church here. So to say you're discrediting my authority, it would be to discredit your baptism, in essence. I have helped you I've helped lay the groundwork so that you can have the church and do things here. So it's not saying you are built upon Paul, but he's saying that I was the authority that helped form and shape the initial parts of the church that you're a part of in Corinth, those saints basically. Verse 3, mine answer to them that do examine me is this. So here's what's interesting. This is something that's called an apologia. Okay, this is apologetics is another way to say it. Okay, Paul is going to now establish and prove why you should follow him. So people are doubting his authority. Okay, some scholars see this chapter as a defense or an apologetic. It is more a personal example of what Paul is talking about, which is that Christian freedom includes the freedom to use or denounce one's right depending upon the communal situation. The question focuses on whether traveling missionaries should receive financial support. That's one of the things he's getting at in here. Okay, should they receive financial support or whether they should work for their own support? Wayment talks about that in his book, The New Testament. So some people looked at Paul and said, well, but we're paying for you. We're financially supporting you. And so maybe we don't want to support you anymore. Or maybe that means because you're being supported by us, you're giving us the flavor that we want, kind of an idea. Or maybe you should support yourself. Or you know, they're trying to look for an angle to say he's biased, basically. And that's and he's trying to say, guys, I'm not biased in this. Come on. So let's get into Paul's explanation here. He says, verse 4, have we not power to eat and to drink? Have we not power to lead about a sister, a wife, as well as other apostles, and as the brethren of the Lord and Cephas? So that's authority to lead. Remember, women didn't have equal authority as men. Women had to follow men and those kinds of things. And there's this priesthood idea of other church leaders. You know, I have the authority in the church to lead other people. So he's establishing his authority there. Verse 6, for I only and Barnabas, have not we power to forbear working? So again, some people complained that Paul asked for support instead of trying to support himself. So again, that says more about the saints than it does about Paul, honestly, that they're not willing to support him. They're like, oh, why is Paul leeching off of us? Why doesn't he work himself? He's got a trade. He's a tradesman. He works with canvas. There's always that debate because he's got to work. He's got to take care of his livelihood. But then it also takes time to do the ministry, which the ministry doesn't directly pay. The ministry is free. But he needs donations, he needs help and support to help him in what he's doing, basically. So there's a little bit of a catch-22 in there. Verse 7, who goeth a warfare any time at his own charges? Who planteth a vineyard and eateth not of the fruit thereof? Or who feedeth a flock and eateth not of the milk of the flock? I say these things as a man, or saith not the law the same also? For it is written in the law of Moses, Thou shalt not muzzle the mouth of the ox that treadeth out the corn. Doth God take care for oxen? Or saith he it altogether for our sakes? For our sakes, no doubt, this is written, that he that ploweth should plow in hope, and he that thresheth in hope should be partaker of his hope. If we have sown unto you spiritual things, it is a great thing if we shall reap your carnal things. So this is a part of his defense. Guys, we have taught you spiritual stuff. We have brought you spiritual bread. We ask you to feed us physical bread. So that we're exchanging. We gave you value. You're giving us value. I'm not living off of you. I'm giving you value. I'm helping you to learn and be spiritually minded, and I need your help to take care of my physical needs. So we're helping each other, just in different ways. Verse 12, if others be partakers of this power over you, are not we rather? Nevertheless, we have not used this power, but suffer all things, lest we should hinder the gospel of Christ. Do ye not know that they which minister about holy things live of the things of the temple? That they which wait at the altar are partakers with the altar? So he's pointing out again, guys, don't you realize the priests make a living off the sacrifices that you bring? They don't get paid directly. They spend so much time at the temple helping you to do your sacrifices that they aren't growing their own crops. They're not out doing their own sowing and building up their own wealth. They are taking their time to help you, and so they ask in return that you donate to them. That's the law of Moses is set up that way. The priests work in the temple because they're there. They don't have land to grow crops. But when the people come in, the priests take part of the sacrifices to feed their family. And that's how the law of Moses was set up. That's how Jews have been doing it for a very long time, up to the end of the Second Temple period when sacrifices ended. And that's what he's saying, basically. So this is part of the challenge. This is fascinating. This is like the best chapter to say, please donate. This is important. I could make that argument myself. I'm doing these videos for free, which takes time away from work and family for me to produce these videos to help you to learn more. So that's why it's nice to get donations and help out. But I want to not make this a sales pitch for myself, but it definitely helps me a lot. But anyways, what he's saying here is, let's see, verse 14, even so hath the Lord ordained that they which preach the gospel should live of the gospel. Remember, he sent his apostles out to just kind of live off the people as they taught in the early days of Christ's ministry. Verse 15, but I have used none of these things, neither have I written these things, that it should be so done unto me. For it were better for me to die than that any man should make my glorying void. For though I preach the gospel, I have nothing to glory of. He's like, guys, I'm not building the church. I'm not doing this to make myself amazing and cool and popular. This is for the glory of God that I'm doing this. For necessity is laid upon me, yea, woe is unto me if I preach not the gospel. Basically, if I don't preach it, God is going to condemn me because he's commanded me to preach it. To not preach it is break his commandments. But that means breaking my commandments with God is now in conflict with taking care of my personal needs. So keeping the commandments means I don't get my personal needs met. Keeping my personal needs met means I break the commandments. So this is this conundrum, which is why I sometimes ask for help of you. Verse 17, for if I do this thing willingly, I have a reward, but if any against my will, a dispensation of the gospel is committed unto me. So again, no matter what he does with his time, he still has an assignment to preach the gospel. And that's why, because the time it takes to preach the gospel, he's asking for people to help him. Verse 18, again, it's the people. Loving and working with the people is more important than the stuff, okay? What is my reward then? Verily that when I preach the gospel, I make the gospel of Christ without charge, that I abuse not my power in the gospel. So it's free. You can learn the gospel from me for free is what he's saying, basically. I don't charge you for this. I'm not putting a paywall, making it where you have to pay to learn the gospel. The gospel was freely taught to me. I am freely teaching it to you. Verse 19, for though I be free from all men, yet have I made myself servant unto all, that I might gain the more. So again, more believers is what most people think he meant by this. He's trying to say, I'm trying to, I'm not doing this in myself. I want more people to learn the gospel, and the more people that learn the gospel, that's great. That helps out. In fact, in verse 20, he says here, and unto the Jews I became as a Jew, that I might gain the Jews, to them that are under the law, as under the law, that I might gain them that are under the law. So Paul's making a distinction here, which is really interesting, because in verse 21, he says, to them that are without the law, as without the law, being not without the law to God, but under the law to Christ, that I might gain them that are without the law. So there's those who are under the law of Moses and those who are not under the law of Moses. So Jews and Gentiles. So he's making a distinction here, basically. What's interesting in verse 20, earlier manuscripts have the extra phrase that Paul mentioned, he is not under the law. So what's fascinating is in verse 20, he's talking about people who are under the law, and then Paul made a comment that he is not under the law. But that was taken out. So some of the earlier Bible manuscripts have it in there, but later Bible manuscripts do not have it in there. So there's been an edit and a revision to the Bible, basically, that took something out of it that was there before, basically. So that's interesting in that verse. Somebody changed it. A scribe changed it later, basically, and took out something that was there in the earlier manuscripts. But so there's that distinction between Jews and Gentiles. When I'm with the Jews, I'm teaching the Jews from a Jewish standpoint. When I'm with the Gentiles, I'm teaching Gentiles from a Gentile standpoint, to help them both understand the gospel. So verse 22, to the weak became I as weak, that I might gain the weak. I am made all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. So this is the empathy. This is, I'm coming to your level. I'm coming to your understanding to teach you the gospel. If we come to people that are here in their understanding and say, let me teach you this, that's not going to work. Let's come to here and start here and help them to grow. Okay, that's what Christ did. We can see it all over the scriptures. He came to their level and taught them from here and brought them up. That's what we should be doing. Not, I am amazing up here. I'm going to teach you phenomenal, amazing stuff. And these people down here going, I don't even know what you just said. I mean, that was an amazing speech, but I don't even know what it does or how it works. We have to think charity. Think of the person more than stuff. If we love teaching deeper doctrines, we have to be careful, because we might love teaching deeper doctrines because we feel prideful. It makes us better than other people because we can teach these. We need to dumb it down. We need to bring it to their level and say, if we truly want to help people with what we know, we will come to them at their level and start there and help them to grow. That's the selfless side. If we're doing this is more telling them we're smarter than them, and therefore it's prideful on our part. That, even though it's good intentioned, it can still be prideful on our part. So we have to be careful. It's the person. How can we help the person more than the teachings? Okay. So let's see, verse 23, and this I do for the gospel's sake, that I might be partaker thereof with you. Know ye not that they which run in a race run all, but one receiveth the prize? So run that ye may obtain. Now this is a fun verse here. Greek and Romans placed great importance on athletic ability. This is where the Olympics come from, is the Greek and Roman culture. So being physically fit, being able to do feats of strength, is something that was important to that culture and society. And so he's using analogies, the sports analogies, that would help them to understand scriptures better, basically. That's what he's doing here. So in Corinth, in fact, the Isthmian games were held every 2 years. Athletes competed for honor and for the winner's crown, which is made of natural olive, laurel, or pine branches. When Paul pointed out that athletes were temperate in all things, he was probably alluding to the strict diets and training regimens that athletes adopted as they trained for competition. Paul suggested that followers of Jesus Christ should strive for victory in a similar manner, working to overcome temptation and achieve spiritual self-mastery. Saints run a race not against others, but against sin and the challenges of mortal life. And the reward is not a corruptible or perishable crown, but a crown of eternal life that lasts forever. That's the New Testament study manual. So that's what he's talking about here, is he's using analogies that these people would understand from the culture to help them think better about the gospel, basically, and doing things. So he continues on, verse 25, every man that striveth for the mastery is temperate in all things. If you've ever competed for a triathlon or a marathon or the Ragnarok races or the Spartan races, Ragnarok. I don't remember if that's the right name for the race or not. But anyways, there's these like Tough Mudder and these races that you can do and triathlons and things. If you're going to do them, you have to be temperate. Like you can't be extreme in anything, because you have to realize that you need to do a lot of cross training. You need to have good cardio, but you need to also have good muscle strength, and you need to eat in a way that helps fuel your body. So you can't go crazy in your eating and stuff. You have to be pretty temperate. You have to really set a regimen and discipline yourself to focus on that regimen the whole time. And that's what he's talking about here. Every man that striveth for the mastery is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a corruptible crown, but we incorruptible. So we should be temperate and have a discipline to study the gospel, to come to Christ ourselves, which means not getting extreme in the world and not getting too extreme in studying, but finding a way to just keep us focused, moving towards our goals of having that deeper relationship with Christ. That's what he's getting at here. So verse 26, he says, I therefore so run, not as uncertainly, so fight I not as one that beateth the air, or boxing. That was fighting fisticuffs was a common sport back then. So verse 27, but I keep under my body and bring it into subjection, lest that by any means, when I have preached to others, I myself should be a castaway. So he says here, I am disciplined in what I do so that I'm not a stumbling block to others and no one can accuse me of doing wrong. I'm being temperate in my body. I'm not trying to be extravagant and things, so that no one can accuse me of false doing, and I'm not a stumbling block for other people either. So he's using the idea of sports and discipline to talk about this is what we should do with the gospel. Discipline ourselves to follow the gospel, build good habits that will help us to stay on that path, to keep moving in our understanding of Christ and coming closer to him. So that's what he's doing here. So hopefully you can see this chapter has a ton of valuable lessons for us, especially from a leadership standpoint, of how can we be better at working with the people we have around us to help them to follow God. Come to their level, work with them, help them build good habits, help them put things in place so that we can move forward and together to come closer to Christ, basically. So let's jump to our next chapter as we continue in the book of Corinthians.